Hello, it is the first Friday of the new year, which means the first Friday I get to chat with you all in 2020. If you haven't been here before, I'm Julie Hirschberg, the owner of Re+active Physical Therapy and Wellness, which is a neurologic physical therapy and exercise studio with 2 locations in the Los Angeles area. Also home to the Schmidt Movement Disorders Fellowship, which is one of the only, but now growing neurologic-based fellowship programs for PTs in the country. And one of the reasons that we hop on here every week, because we're so excited to share what we learn and share that to the world. And here at Re+active, our mission is to help people with neurologic disorders recover the movement, strength, and confidence that they need to live their fullest life and do this in a brain-changing way. And kind of excited about the brain-changing thing because when we talk about hope today, we see how it changes the brain. And I'm really excited about that. So if you're new, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. And I see Kathy Gilbody joined. If you don't know who Kathy Gilbody is, she is a really amazing neuro-PT, hi Kathy, who really helped me develop a lot of my own critical skills in learning and teaching. So hi Kathy, thanks for joining. So today we're talking about hope for dystonia, and why are we talking about this? So I first have to say that I've been really inspired by hope over the holiday, and it rekindled in me one of the really passionate pieces about being a neuro PT. Early on in Re+active, when we were growing, we developed a little tagline. You know where Re+active is actually from? It was from recover activity. So that was something that we were really passionate about, is actually recovering and restoring people's function. So we had this tagline, it said recover activity, restore hope, and rediscover joy. And I still really take that to heart with each and every person that I meet with, the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis. And the restoring hope part is the part I want to focus on today. It's a very important part. And often when we see people, and this just happened to me actually just a moment ago as I was speaking with somebody in our exercise class, but with many patients, they have been to multiple providers. They've read a ton of things on the internet that have said there's no cure, no hope, no treatment, lifelong disability, progressive decline, degenerative, all these words like this, and leave people are left feeling very hopeless. And coming from a place of hopelessness, it's really hard to make improvements. And this has definitely been the case when I meet people with dystonia. They've also often felt very hopeless. And they've turned in many directions, only been told the same thing. And I would like to share a few things that I typically share with people. And I think these are really important for all healthcare providers. So today we're going to discuss, why is there hope for dystonia with physical therapy? Why is hope that very first step that we need to take? And then how do we know if somebody is ready to get started on that program that can provide them hope? So before we dive in, of course, if you're new and you're like, what is dystonia? Anyway, dystonia is actually a movement disorder. And this is why we talk about dystonia a lot, because we have a movement disorder fellowship. It's something I'm very passionate about. It's a movement disorder characterized by involuntary muscle contractions. And these are frequently associated with abnormal movements or postures. What we see a lot of is cervical dystonia, focal dystonia. You may have heard like a musician's cramp or a writer's cramp or a runner's dystonia in the limb. And so this is dystonia. In the past, there wasn't a lot of treatment for dystonia, and certainly not with physical therapy. But this area is growing. The evidence base is growing. And I would say the evidence is still not really, really high level evidence. There's not huge randomized controlled trials, but there are some small ones starting to come out. But there is evidence, and we have experience here in the clinic that shows that it can change and that there's hope for recovery and improvement and quality of life with dystonia. Now, I didn't want to like start off the new year just by like listing every research study. I want to give you a little overview, talk about a couple of recent articles that just came out in late 2019 as well. And one of these, which I love to talk about with my patients, was a randomized study of Botox versus Botox plus physical therapy. And this was in the treatment of cervical dystonia. And I like this one a lot because this is often how I'm working with a neurologist, is to time our therapy with their Botox so that we can perhaps extend the length of its efficacy or just improve their overall movement in a nice window of time. So in this study, what they found is that people who had PT plus Botox had much more improvement. They improved in their Twister score, and the Twisters is a standardized assessment that looks at both the movement as well as the disability. They also saw that those with PT and Botox actually had scores that approached healthy control values, which I think is very important. Oftentimes people are asking me like, well, like how much recovery can I have? And I've seen it across the spectrum for sure, but the research is showing that people can have full recovery. And some of the key pieces of literature come out of the group at UCSF, and Nancy Beal, who has done studies in all of the dystonias, but in the focal dystonias. And what you can see is that there are people in these small studies that have full return to their music, for example. With very specific therapy, mind you. It doesn't just happen overnight. So anyway, so this was a recent article from 2019, and Wei, W-E-I, was the key author. I can put a link to that. That was the cervical dystonia one. Another one from 2019 as well looked at the use of therapy in focal dystonias and found a similar finding. There is a really nice study. It's one of my favorites. I talked about it before. This was from 2018. This is Prudente. This is Teresa Kimberly's group. She leads a lot of the dystonia PT research, and it provides a really nice review of the evidence that shows that physical therapy can be helpful. The quality of the evidence is low. These are not large trials. They lack controls and sometimes objective measurements, but the findings are promising, especially in the well-designed trials, and show that in some intensive movement practice combined with motor training can have positive results in the cervical dystonias and the focal dystonias. What I really like about her review is that it classifies the types of trainings that have been studied, because they're all over the board. So there might be a sensory type training, a motor training, a relaxation training, use of body awareness and perception. And this has all been done in the dystonias over the course of the last couple of decades, and have found positive results in small studies. And these are all bits and pieces that we use in our own dystonia program. As I mentioned, big fan of Nancy Beal. They published the learning-based sensory motor training, and I wanted to tell you just a little bit about that type of training because it is a big commitment, and this is something that I talk to my patients about. But it looks at including fitness exercise, so 3 to 5 times a week for 34 to 40 minutes at the 80% max heart rate, doing some cognitive exercises with BrainFit, supervised group practice, an hour a day of home practice, and and a lot of therapy, right? So this was the group that had some people had full recovery, and the people did better the more that they practice. So I think that's a key piece. I think we hear that for everything. The group practice that they had was 3 hours a day for 5 days a week for 2 weeks. So it's a lot, it's intensive, and then 5 hours a day for a week. So we're not talking your standard therapy here. So when people ask me about the hope that can be found, it is in a little more intensive therapy. And I think that's okay. You know, we can provide that and let people really know. So hope, why there is hope is first that the evidence is there, the experience is there, that people can have improvements. And I think this is, you know, not every physician is aware of this level of evidence because these are very small studies in the PT world. And I think we need to do a good job of getting this out there. And I'm very thankful to the groups, the big research groups who have been really promoting this and getting the literature out there. So that's the why. Now, let's talk about the hope as the first step. And this is something that Nancy Beal even talks about in the learning-based sensory motor training. As we kind of prepare the person to get started in the program, one of the first pieces is that they have to look they have to have this positive outlook on the potential for improvement. Another way to think about this, because we've talked about the optimal theory a lot, is those enhanced expectancies. We know from the motor control literature, when we have those, when we've seen somebody else with dystonia have improvement, for example, even if it's just watching a video or sharing a story, those provide a substrate for those changes in the brain and improving the movement. We know that from the literature. And there's a huge area of psychology literature, neuroscience literature, actually looking at the effect of hope and the science of hope. And they know that hopefulness actually changes the brain. We get like pumped up chemicals, like all those great endorphins and enkephalins, like all those morphine-like things released in the brain. And fMRI studies as well has shown the circuitry of this, having that hope or feelings of hopefulness actually diminishing some of the circuits of anxiety, for example. So this is why this is the very first step in the process of our physical therapy, is sharing those enhanced expectancies and sharing the hope that there is for improvement in dystonia. So that certainly makes me hopeful. I wasn't trying to be punny about that, but that makes me hopeful, and that makes me excited to share these things when I meet people with dystonia. Now, as I have seen quite a few people with dystonia, there's varying degrees that people are really ready to dive in. And so I wanted to give you almost just a little like checklist here of, is a person ready for PT? And I think the very first question is, do they have hope? Is there a positive expectation of improvement? Because if not, we don't have all those great neurochemicals being released, and really, really very likely that those improvements won't proceed. We're not talking about placebos here. We're just talking about having that positive expectation. So hope, a belief, this kind of goes along with number one, a belief in neuroplasticity and brain changes. So an understanding that dystonia is a change in brain connections, and that those connections could be changed. That's very important, because if your belief is that dystonia is only a muscular tightness problem, and then we're going to go trying to make brain changes, you're just not going to be on board. You got to be on the brain train is what I say. Like, you got to be ready for doing some of those crazy, wacky things like mirror therapy and laterality training that change the brain. 3, ready to make change in general. Now, I think this is probably for anybody coming into physical therapy, but especially when there are habits and things like work or life situations that may be contributing to the dystonia. And this is a really, really hard one. I have had people who have a dystonia that's related to their work with their hands, but they're not able to change the way they work, for example. Or if you had a musician's dystonia and you couldn't stop playing, or couldn't or wouldn't, then you can't start making those positive neuroplastic changes when the negative neuroplasticity is occurring. So that's a really big one. Number 4, ready for a referral if it's needed. So I always propose that a person has a movement disorder neurologist who's handling their case medically. Super important. And we'll make the referral to somebody if they don't already. A referral to a practitioner for diet, nutrition, exercise, if those lifestyle factors are not in sync. I would add sleep onto that as well. So screening with a sleep hygiene index and referring as well. Sleep is a huge component of dystonia. So that one's really, really important. And then finally, psychology. So if there are life stressors that are certainly contributing to the dystonia, having that support emotionally is so important. So I'm not saying that everybody needs all of these referrals, but being open and ready for all of the team members to join in and help in this process is very important. So then number 5 is being ready to commit to practice. So like I talked about, the evidence base for dystonia is a pretty intensive practice. It's daily practice at home. It's doing some in-person things quite intensely. And if you don't have the time or not ready to set aside the time, it's not a good time to start. I hate wasting people's time. So having that readiness to commit to that is very important. With those things in place, so the hope, the positive expectation, the belief in neuroplasticity and brain changes, ready to make some behavior change, ready for referral if needed, ready to commit to practice, you get those 5 things in place, and then you're ready to dive into that practice for dystonia and for making positive changes, so that you as the therapist can have hope, the person can have hope that there are changes to be made in the future. And that gets me super excited and really just like drives me as a therapist. So I'm going to put a couple links in here. I know I said I would put a link into one of those recent articles. I'll put that in there. We also have our dystonia program handout, which is what we use with the people that we see with dystonia to outline our program. You can grab that for free. I'll put a link there. And if you want to stay up to date, join our newsletter. In particular, if you want to stay up to date with our education, join our education newsletter on our reactivept.com education page. And one other thing that I had mentioned to our crew that I would announce today, this has been very long awaited. Many people have been asking me about this, so this is pretty exciting. But we have been working behind the scenes for about a year on a clinical mastermind program, and our applications are opening next Friday. So if you're catching this video, you're like, what is a clinical mastermind? Like, what are we doing here? So what this is, it's a small group of passionate and should I say hope-filled therapists, PTs, OTs, people that are super dedicated to growing a very deep level of expertise together. It is a 6-month certificate program for the person who really wants to grow with us here at Re+active. And again, not just get some how-tos, but grow in a very deep way to really accelerate your practice. This is for the person that really likes diving into the physiology of understanding the why of things, not just the what or the how of it. They like courses, and we have a lot of courses, but they want to take it the next step. They want to apply it. They want to collaborate, problem solve together for their patient and their patient cases. And we have had many people reach out to us for mentoring, for guidance in neuro-PT, or we've had people who are interested in our fellowship, but not able to move out here or make a year-long commitment. And this is for you. So the Mastermind is centered around topics that are part of our fellowship learning. So our in-person weekend courses, our mini courses, they include a live session for that deep dive, not your typical journal club, but deep dive into physiology and understanding. A live session together in a small group for patient problem solving. So submit your case, background, let's get in there, like those tough patients where you're just like, I don't know what to do here. Like, get some input from our team, which is PT, OT, ortho, neuro. Some of our guests as well are going to join us. So our guest speakers who are part of our courses are going to join us for that. And then finally, an opportunity to do some of that live. So come to our weekend course and stay a little late for a mastermind session. Come and do a shadow day at Re+active. All of these things I'm so excited about because I like to be with people in person. And then one of my favorite parts of the Mastermind are the resources. So you will have a shared Google Drive folder with stuff organized and easy to access, patient handouts, checklists, videos, templates, articles, all super easy for you. So if you are looking to be inspired with us, dive deep, tackle your toughest cases with a group of experts, the applications are going to open on January 10th, but you can sign up to get an email reminder. I know a couple people have already reached out to me. I'll send you that application link as soon as it's up. January 10th is the day for a week to get your applications in, and then we actually kick off with the Mastermind in March, right around our weekend course, Neuropracticity 2.0, that we're doing with Mike Studer. So we cannot wait. I cannot wait personally to do this with you. You can find it at reactivept.com/mastermind. And thanks so much for joining me. I will catch you next week.